Michael L. Roberts. Everyone would be familiar with your work. Rocketman, Belfast, Better Man, Death on the Nile, House of the Dragon. I mean, the list just goes on and on. What would you say are some of the key things you need to become confident on camera?
When someone says, oh, just be yourself on camera, it's like, well, what does that mean?
Talking to people in their right language is also crucial for successful communication.
And I suddenly find myself in a room with executive producers and the director, Dexter Fletcher. What I'm trying to do is speak in their language.
Yep.
Their language is visual. What they need to see is that I understand the visual, the most persuasive version of Elton John, before I help the actor become that.
So does preparation play a big part in your overall confidence?
Enormously, yes. Do you turn up on stage and go, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then, oh my God, we don't know any songs, right? And the gig is over. At the heart of the three appeals, ethos, the quality of your character, logos, the clear of your logic, your reasoning, and then pathos, the quality of your emotion. When you start to take away any one of those elements, it can become like, amazing character, very, very experienced. What he says makes perfect sense, but I'm left feeling nothing.
Should people be doing some kind of vocal warm-up before they talk to camera?
It's a poem. We're just going to take it line by line. I'm going to alter the pitch as I go through. Until there is no hope for my fine feathered friend.
You actually worked quite closely with Matt Smith.
The intensity on that particular one is that, of course, it has its own language in terms of Valyrian. I had to essentially learn this language overnight in the hotel. The next day we were on set and I was essentially prompting Matt with the lines, essentially something like,
What tips would you give for script writing?
The takeaway up front for script writing, screenwriting for a video in that mix would be,
if you're going to give one takeaway to people listening now that are creating videos, either for themselves as an individual creator or as a business, what would that piece of advice be?
We touched upon an element of it earlier, which is
Michael L. Roberts.
Luke Bloody Sharon.
Luke Bloody Sharon. I love it. Thank you so much for being here today. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on our video marketing podcast, because not only are you a super, super talented individual, but you're also an absolute gentleman as well. So we really, really appreciate your time being here.
Thank you, my friend. Well, ceaseless gratitude to you for all the time that I've been here with you yesterday and today. For all future guests of this show, then they're in for a bloody glorious time. So thank you. In spite of all external circumstances, full of gratitude and happiness to be here. So thank you for having me.
Amazing, amazing. And I can assure you the pleasure is absolutely all mine. Now, is it fair to say that you are mostly behind the scenes when it comes to the projects that you work on, but I would say that almost everyone would be familiar with your work?
Yes, indeed. Certainly in terms of the film world and the corporate world, then I tend to find I listen for a living and act as a thought partner and creative behind the scenes guy for many people who are then on screen or in the boardroom or otherwise. So yeah, that would be a fair analysis of the overarching position. Yes.
Some of the projects you've worked on are just absolutely amazing. I mean, Rocketman, Belfast, Better Man, Death on the Nile, House of the Dragon. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. It's really incredible. Whether you're working on a big production and you're a professional actor, or you are an individual making YouTube videos at home, what would you say are some of the key things you need to become, or at least appear confident on camera?
One of the difficulties in my professional output is this notion that there's a degree of homogeneity of advice that has developed over the years. It happens in multiple industries. And so it has that sense of, here are my top 10 tips, or here are my, whatever it might be. The truth that I have found through decades of being in that one-to-one position is that, to borrow from Mike Tyson, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. So the sense of bespoking in the moment to each and every individual is one of those crucial elements. We'll come to explore this more, but you mentioned film and YouTube there. One of the elements of film, whilst obviously we share the notion from film and YouTube of working with the camera, but of course in film, we're playing a character and we're embodying that character.
Yeah.
Whereas depending on the YouTube channel and the nature of the audience and to whom you're speaking, then you're often trying to find your own authentic self in that regard. And so that becomes a different skill set. The one is embodying a character. The other is being yourself, which takes a long time and a lot of work, which we can dig into.
Which one's harder, playing a role or playing yourself?
Well, I would venture the harder thing is playing yourself, because it takes a long time to be wholly authentic to yourself, caring, compassionate, protective, experienced, accepting, grateful, etc. That's heavy work.
Yeah.
And with that comes a sense of the risk when someone says, "Oh, just be yourself on camera." That's the first element. It's like, well, what does that mean? Whereas it's much easier to be a character in principle, because there's a different set of attachments to that. You're doing a job. It's a role, and so it's your job to embody that. Give an example of Cary Grant. Cary Grant was real name Archibald Leach, I believe, and they said so. When asked about how he became Cary Grant, it was this notion of, well, I imagined what the character of Cary Grant might be, and I pretended to be Cary Grant until I be,
Yeah.
in that sense. And that takes a long time. But still, it had that detachment of he was creating something for the movies, something for the Hollywood industry in that regard. So still kind of a character.
Yeah.
And, who knows what Archibald Leach was dealing with underneath that character until, the mask became something else. So very much depends on your goals and the needs of the audience, I would say, in that mixture.
Excellent. So the thing you kept mentioning there was the authentic voice. Now, this is something I found very, very difficult to work with, even on my own channel, my own YouTube channel, is trying to find a voice that's more engaging, that is a little bit performative, because, I'm trying to make videos that are more engaging, but still also being my voice, so to speak. Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, he always talks about how when he speaks, he is still himself. He's just himself dialed up to 11. I always thought that was quite fascinating. You've got quite a lot of experience trying to develop your own authentic voice, haven't you? What was your process with that?
In the first instance, growing up in South Wales, then there was a natural sound and accent in that regard. I'm from Merthyr Tydfil, so a very kind of industrialized area, not so much Welsh speaking, but as a result of the industrialization post sort of 1850 Industrial Revolution and otherwise, but very much a sort of hard Valleys accent, with luminaries like Anthony Hopkins, Richard Burton, Tom Jones as examples of voices that crossed waves and made waves and crossed oceans, as it were, in that sense.
Nice.
One of the natures for me in terms of finding what it is that my voice was and is was that there was a sense for me initially of, well, how does this translate into what I'm doing in the world? So I began professionally as a jazz musician, a jazz singer and otherwise, which tends to become very Americanized in that sense. And so you start to, like with Cary Grant, right? You start to imagine who the character of Michael L. Roberts, the jazz singer, is until you become that. And then you can't tell where the mask starts and starts and stops. So having gone through all of that process, and I go into film and I'm helping other people become other people again, which means that I need to become, if I'm helping Taron become Elton John, I need to become Elton John first in order to work out how to help Taron get there. And so in that process, I lost who I was vocally. And so as a result of that, I've spent around 2 years, 3 years now, kind of breaking my voice in the cave, as it were, to get back to a version of myself that I felt was, that I was able to sing from with a place of, authenticity in its sort of broadest sense, but most importantly, without a sense of wearing a mask in order to do so.
Excellent. So what's that kind of process look like? You say about breaking your voice down. What does it actually mean? One
of the things you find coaching other people is that a little knowledge is a dangerous thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes it's much a simpler process if someone doesn't have any baggage attached of training and otherwise, to say, look, these are the skill sets that you have. This is where I'm going to help you nuance them towards the role that you need to play in this regard. The moment there's an element of training, there's something to be undone before it can be redone. In the case of me, there were decades of training, decades of experience, decades of coaching that training, re-mythologizing it, and coming up with various methods around that in order to be everything that I needed to be for others. So in the first instance, very much like a coach situation, then I hired a great friend and producer to essentially sit there and stop me every time he felt that I was being inauthentic, for want of a catch word here. He knows me so well. We've worked together for so many years, and I'll talk a little bit about him later. But that I knew I was in solid hands. So it was over a series of original songs over 2 years that I actually wrote 12 years ago, had reimagined with him in this situation. And so, I basically had him stop me every time he heard something that didn't sound like me at my spoken level.
Yeah.
And so bit by bit through those recordings and through that collaboration, I had essentially hired my own editing coach, as it were, as a producer in order to prevent me from bringing artifice to any reality.
Yeah. And those songs are coming out, aren't they? Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Yep. They're being mastered at the moment. Excited to say. So this gentleman's name is Nick Peeney, absolutely legendary session musician and a true artist in every sense of the term. And so we worked together first in jazz and then through Americana, country, pop, blues, etc. And so he was the natural choice to bring on board for this. So yeah, we're hoping to release them this November.
Oh, amazing.
With a few sync opportunities related to it in terms of movie series and trailer placement. So
wow.
I'm a huge fan of movie trailers my whole life. The craft of movie trailering, I think, is glorious.
Yeah.
And so very excited to have some songs featured in those.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Incredible. And now, as well as talking with confidence, I think there's also, particularly with video marketing and advertising, talking to people in their right language is also crucial for successful communication. You told me a story yesterday about how when you were first involved in the Rocketman project, about your first meeting with Dexter Fletcher and how that went. I actually thought it was a fascinating story because, well, you tell the story. What actually happened?
The lovely setting of Bray Studios, which was being reinvigorated by Rocketman money at the time, just outside Windsor. For those of you who don't know, Bray was the home of the Hammer House of horror movies and otherwise. So there was still some, I think the old mansion from Hound of the Baskervilles and otherwise was still still out the back there. And so you had both the natural construction site that a movie set is, plus the fact that they were actually rebuilding the studios in and of themselves. And so we had complete free range of the studio through all pre-production. So my first meeting there came off, emails and calls. And I suddenly found myself in a room with executive producers and the director, Dexter Fletcher, legend that he is, dangerously intelligent and severely charming, as I'm contractually obliged to say about him at every turn. And so in that situation, not realizing quite the extent that I was going into when I arrived in that room, it's a sort of open plan office scenario there, no piano. And so when they're asking me to describe what it is that I know about Elton John in terms of his singing style, his musical writing style, and his piano style, I'm in a cold, empty office block, with three high-kicking individuals. So the only thing I can imagine to do is essentially start rearranging the office furniture in the scenario. To pick up on your point there, because what I'm trying to do is speak in their language. Yep. Their language is visual. Yeah. They don't need to know that Elton John was based in classical and then moves through rock and roll and blues and jazz and otherwise. What they need to see is that I understand the visual rhetoric, the most persuasive version of Elton John, before I help the actor become that. And so in rearranging the furniture and describing various Top of the Pops performances and concert appearances of Elton, demonstrating with, let's say, chairs and tables to the point where it's a piano and imaginary camera, then in that moment they understood that I understood the visual rhetoric, and that landed me the gig.
That is so clever, because I think if you had sat there and just spoken to them about everything that you knew about Elton John, it wouldn't have had anywhere near the same impact. But to have that visualization of saying, well, this is the shot that you need and this is how he's going to be, I think that works so well. So it's a stroke of genius from yourself to be able to do that.
Necessity is the seed of innovation.
Now, Now, working on that project, obviously you got to work with, I think, as I understand it, you had a huge role, really, in that movie. One big part was getting Taron Egerton ready. You had 8 weeks, basically, didn't you, to transform him into a piano-playing Elton John. But when you first met, his piano playing wasn't quite, I guess, Elton's level, was it?
The thing to dig about Taron is the phenomenal vocal instrument that he had.
He was a great singer. He's got musical theatre.
Musical theatre, and very much based in that. So I'll come back to that point in a moment, but it definitively helps when it comes to then applying any other instrument to the situation. At our first meeting at Abbey Road, we go into the room. I say, okay, so you're set to be Elton John. I understand I'm going to be helping you with the vocal side, and also that I'm going to be supporting you on the piano front. So if I ask you, no pressure whatsoever, just sit at the piano and just, hit that piece of furniture. And so he sat down and with one finger went dun, 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 dun. And then with all of Taron's inimitable charm went, that's it, mate.
And at which point you were like, oh, shit.
Well, at which point I enjoyed the performative cheek of the of the moment.
Yeah.
So therefore we began our glorious journey. I pride myself on being able to get anyone in front of a piano, playing with two hands, improvising and using the pedals within 30 to 60 minutes.
Wow.
And so that's my kind of party trick in the first instance.
You would be so disappointed with me.
Well, you say that. I haven't been beaten yet. But, yes, you're right. There's always a first time for everything. Yeah. But yes, so that party trick held me in very good stead that day at Abbey Road. And then, of course, the real work began. But, we got on phenomenally well. We're both Welsh. And so that gave us that natural shared ethos in the moment. And so started a really glorious musical partnership, which I'm happy to elaborate on. But
amazing.
Yes,
Amazing. Yeah. So how did you get him vocally ready? Because, Elton John he's a big character. I'm assuming Taron's very, very different in real life. How did he get into the moment? How did he psychologically and physically prepare himself for it?
Let's take the split in the first instance of the vocal and the physicality. So on the vocal side, the first important thing that I did really was to outline the fact that Elton John would not have heard anything that Taron had heard when he was, coming up with your song, Crocodile Rocket, et cetera, et cetera. And so I put an embargo on all music after the songs that we were working on were written. To boost that scenario, because Taron would have dinner with Elton every week, kind of checking in on the progress and vibe. Elton was phenomenal in terms of kind of staying away from set so that he wasn't making Taron feel like, I'm playing that guy over there.
That would have added a lot of pressure. Yes. Yeah.
So phenomenally supportive in that sense. But they would just have a dinner every week to check in. So I kind of hijacked that in order to say, can Elton provide the records that he was listening to?
Oh, wow.
Each time if we're working on your song, if we're working on Crocodile Rock and everything else. So it turned into a great series of photographs from Elton on a glorious pink bedspread of vinyl album covers every Wednesday night, basically, that I'd get sent. So I'd be sat on my own gig and I'd get pictures through from Taron saying, Elton says this, Elton says that for, your song, et cetera, et cetera. So as a result of narrowing down that field of reference, then suddenly he was immersing himself in understanding vocally where this came from.
Wow.
There's a lot of talk about, the transatlantic accent, the mixture of British and American and otherwise, but fundamentally music and all communication in its original sense is sound to sound, physical being to physical being. And so to impersonate and recreate what Elton experienced ahead of those things, I found to be the most authentic way for Taron to really lock into, this is what I had and this is what inspired me.
That's amazing. I had no idea that you'd go that deep, really. I thought it'd all be just more kind of just physical preparation rather than all that psychology and even thinking about the kind of music he listened to, which is, again, it's another level that I never would have considered. What was Elton's feedback when he saw Taron performing as him?
Again, in that wonderful way of remaining back so that he wasn't influencing too much, then sparse but effective, I would say, was the general vibe of feedback. Fundamentally, it was the poetic license for Taron to find his own embodiment of the character.
Okay.
The severe danger in that situation where the person is living and has stakes in the project and otherwise is like, that's not what I would have done. That's not how I did it. That's not how I felt about that. Et cetera, et cetera. And so there's a huge sort of signing over of poetic license that needs to happen up front.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you're eternally at the mercy of that.
Things won't get done. Yeah, you'll be forever making corrections. Yeah.
So therefore, if anything, I'd say Elton became more involved on the sort of flavor of the arrangements. So working very closely with Giles Martin at Abbey Road as sort of overarching music producer, then it became very much the sense of how that was playing into the narrative of the movie. And therefore, using the content, which we'll come to on the communication side, using the content of the music to give him an avenue through which to provide feedback, rather than taking apart anything about Taron's embodiment of a character.
Sure. But what was his overall sentiment?
Oh, a shameless delight at every shameless delight at every possible turn, without question. I never felt. Obviously, I was. One could argue you might be in quite a firing line in my position. In that scenario, and so I never felt anything but support. And how many more photographs of vinyl would you like to keep this on track from Mr. John? And then an enormous amount of credit to Dexter Fletcher, who was transformative in more ways than one to my life, but was a hell of a director for a first movie for me.
Because he took you under his wing quite a bit, didn't he, in that movie?
Yes, yeah. So he in his Shakespearean days and beyond, he had a profound fondness for Anthony Hopkins. So and he had developed a rather glorious. Glorious impression of Hopkins that he came to use on me, being Welsh, but at its deepest level, appreciating that the music, Taron's singing and piano, and indeed then the cast's singing and piano, was such a fundamental part of keeping the movie on track, which obviously I didn't know going in, but sure as hell knew once we were underway. Then Dexter kept me close in a very wonderful way. Actually put a director's seat next to him.
Wow.
and had me sit there for pretty much the entire shoot.
Incredible.
And as we were going through various scenes, would explain, now see, the thing is, what we want here is this, and what we want here, and what I'm going for there is bringing a good impression. What I really want here is now Granny's going to come in, and then we're going to move the light, and so it was a sort of beautiful learning experience around what I was doing musically, and also showed the trust that we ended up putting in each other, whereby we put all the preparation work in, so that on set we can be having a laugh, and he can be talking to me more about the broad craft, because it isn't, what's gone wrong on the piano? Get in there, sort it out. It's like we're all completely relaxed, and therefore you can talk to me about the lighting choices.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, preparation absolutely is key for all these kinds of things. So being under his wing and being in that environment and being so close to the director, is that giving you any ambitions to be a director yourself for your own projects?
So I'm obsessed with that sort of creative osmosis, or to put in a Welsh accent, a process of osmosis, which always comes out as a soundbite and sounds like that when I say it.
It will be now.
Through a process of osmosis. Absolutely obsessed with that, and, gaining so much value from high value individuals around me of such creative talent and otherwise. So, my job is to listen. My job is to immerse myself in all things, and then be able to help other people become that, and to take everything, I can for myself in the mixture of that. So it was sort of inevitable that, that being sat next to Dexter for that shoot gave me a flavor. And so I've been gradually developing my screenwriting and director side of things. So directing music videos and short films, and working on various screenplays with subsequent director mentors who I'm happy to go into. And so, yes, it's very much the sense for me where, as we'll come to talk about in terms of the importance of material to authenticity and otherwise, the beauty of something that's composed or directed for others is that sense of holding on to a vision, being able to imagine it come to fruition at the other end, a bit like Archibald Leach saying, I'm going to be Cary Grant, and that's what it's going to look like. And then that instantly instills in you a great patience to go down as many, days, weeks, months, years as it takes for that thing to become the pinnacle of what it needs to be. And I've gotten that from great directors to the point where, yes, there's a version of me that very much wants to, sit in the seat to my left on that imagined Rocketman set as was. But the beauty of putting the work in and earning that, to me, there's no shortcuts to me. I have to earn it, and I have to build myself towards that. And so I take great creative satisfaction and comfort in that process when I'm able to.
Yeah, yeah. When I was doing my research on you, I felt like I knew you pretty well anyway, but I was still very, very surprised the more that I uncovered. One of the things I found the most of was your press videos that you did for Rocketman. And so I felt like this is one of the first times I've seen an interview where you are Michael L. Roberts. And so when you're answering those questions, was that an unusual situation for you compared to your normal performative work, or how did that feel?
Interesting. Yeah. I'd done a fair bit of that as a jazz singer,
Right.
moving towards the sort of top of that industry. I also started out in London working for Radio 2 and 3 and Associated Rediffusion Television as a sort of pre-interviewer and transcriber and otherwise. And so I was, I'd lived in that world. The sweet thing about the Rocketman scenario, it was a wonderful head of press for Paramount called Julia Jones. On set, you have different colored badges depending on your degree of severity to the production. And so, and I would be, at one point, was the sort of busiest man on set, running from one session to the next in order to get another cast member, ready for another scene. So Julia had seen me running like hell through the kitchen at Bray from one soundstage to another in order to get the thing. So I was like, who is this guy? So she finally managed to catch me in a quieter moment and sat me down. And so in doing so, she then very kindly started getting me to record behind the scenes interviews for Paramount. Yeah. That led to a pretty substantive press day where I was teaching journalists from all around the world piano and how to sing certain elements of the songs, and then the Insider New York feature that went quite substantively large. Initially, I have to say, because of the question mark over how Taron's surname should be pronounced.
Oh, really?
So Edgerton or Egerton. Depending on which side of the YouTube wars you come down, then I'm going to keep myself out of that one for now. Okay. I do know the truth. It'll shock you.
Okay, really?
but I'm staying clear.
I wonder if I've been pronouncing it wrong this whole time.
I very occasionally revisit those videos to sort of remind myself of that degree of immersion. Yeah. I did before coming here, just to remind myself of what stories was I telling back then about that work. And so it's interesting to me that that's a guy who is absolutely completely immersed in that one project, and therefore is just happily drowning in it all in a glorious way. The detail that I'm coming out with there is
exactly. I mean, and it's
just the work.
That came across. And coming back to my first question about how do you appear more confident on camera, one thing that came across to me in those interviews was you came across super confident. And I think part of that was because you were so immersed in the project. You knew everything about it. There was going to be no gotcha questions where you're going to be tripped up by a journalist. You knew the answer to everything. So does preparation play a big part in your overall confidence on camera?
Enormously, yes. I think there are two sides. There's the technical side of knowing all of this equipment, knowing what we're doing with microphones, cameras, and otherwise, particularly lighting. Love lighting. Everything is in the lighting.
Yes.
And then there's the question of, you turn up on stage and go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then, oh my God, we don't know any songs, right? And the gig is over. So all of the clues are in the material. All of the, the preparation is in the work. Yeah. And it is only once you've immersed yourself in that you have anything to talk about. We can manufacture surface topics, surface things. Like I say about, top 10 list of what to do, not to do, et cetera, et cetera. But unless you're immersed in something, then it becomes the question, well, why am I listening to you talk about it? And this feeds into the power of rhetoric in its classical sense, being at the heart of the three appeals. Ethos, the quality of your character, which really is, why am I listening to you say these things to me as opposed to someone else? Yeah. Logos, the clear of your logic, your reasoning as to how you're bringing that situation to me. And then pathos, the quality of your emotion. In what way are you driving me to that, to the conclusion that you want to take me down? Now, anything in the creative arts has all of those things flying, right? Occasionally it can be, well, that young artist had no ethos, but my God, the chops and what I feel about it emotionally, like she's going to grow into that. But my God, this, when her ethos is fully boosted up, there's going to be something, incredible happening there. But my God, has she got it, in this moment? When you start to take away any one of those elements, it can become like, an amazing character. Very, very experienced, and what he does musically or what he says politically or in a corporate sense makes perfect sense. But I'm left feeling nothing. Yeah, I'm not moved to a next step,
Absolutely.
By that. So,
yeah, and again, even from a video marketing perspective, from an advertising perspective, which is why I want to keep bringing this back to.
No, of course, yeah.
ethos, I think as you called it, the emotional side. Is that right?
Pathos on the emotion.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So
No, at all.
So that
Too many
pathos
Aussies.
Yes. I might need to get to re-explain those to me again, actually. But yeah, they are so important in terms of moving the needle, in terms of getting somebody to listen and to take an action. And interestingly, you don't just work with creative clients and these big film projects. You actually work on an executive level as well, don't you? C-suite level kind of execs, and you coach them one-to-one.
Yes.
And in fact, interestingly, you even spoke to me yesterday about, say it to me again, it was ethos, pathos, and
logos as the logic reason. Yeah.
And so you even work with them on those kinds of levels, as I understand it.
Very much, yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about that because it's super interesting.
Sure. So depending on the desired outcome, then we need to align those elements for that person. Whilst it could have a tagline that within the creative arts and corporate arena, I help leading artists and executive leaders to master their physical voice, their persuasive identity, and their professional message, right? And it's like, okay, great, but what does that mean? In reality, I get human beings coming to me who are in positions of extreme stress, extreme high stakes in terms of finance, law, philanthropy, and otherwise, getting money to good rather than bad, et cetera. Yeah. And so I work exclusively and believe in exclusively the individuals, not ideologies. So if I believe in an individual, then I essentially become a thought partner to them. Yep. That can be their physical voice expert in terms of a public speaking aspect. It can be a speechwriter or a sort of message construction in terms of what the company is putting out as a communication strategy or on social media. It can be in my alternate capacity as a geopolitical analyst. And so that comes into play in the mixture there. And so we start where we stand in the first instance in terms of that partnership. Doesn't happen cold very much. It's not a case of LinkedIn, LinkedIn internal mail. Hi, Rocketman here. Etc. So often it's that warm recommendation in the mix. But yeah, at its heart, whilst attached to major finance firms, law firms, and otherwise, I'm working with these individuals in terms of their desired outcomes and where they feel the audience or the electorate or otherwise needs them most.
You are so talented, aren't you? It's unbelievable.
I make a lot of noise. That's all it is, and for which I apologize. But, yes.
That's incredible to think you work at such a high level on these productions, but at the same time, you're also working at a high level, like at an executive side as well. I really find quite fascinating, even a geopolitical kind of analysis that you said you do as well, because you've got a master's in that. Is that right as well?
International relations and political science. Yes.
Yeah. So I guess you look at politicians as to how they communicate things as well.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, let's take Prime Minister's questions as an example of a situation where ethos, logos, and pathos are in play. What's the quality of the character, which is obviously related to the individual, but also the party that they're representing. So therefore the character of the ideology. Then what's the logos, the logic of the reasoning in terms of the debate exchange in its classical sense. And then, of course, the notion of, is anyone moved to do anything by it at the end? Or indeed, how are they using emotion in order to bring that into being? So if we take that example, same as with video marketing and otherwise, it comes back to that question of, well, for what? For whom? You can beat your opponent in a debate on television at Wednesday at noon in that regard, and that does nothing for the country, nothing for the political landscape, nothing for world peace or otherwise, in that sense. The two angles that one should be focusing on in that sense are the media. What is the message that's getting to the media in order to help transform approaches, minds, and otherwise in the first instance? And then most importantly, what is the message that reaches the electorate in that sense? And what we find increasingly over recent years, various leaders have tried different tacks on it, but inevitably they all end up kind of one heavy, right? Too much logos, too much pathos, ethos worn down by existing ideology, past policies, past leaders, etc. And so the dial doesn't get moved. And so there's an argument in the PMQ scenario that it should go back to being non-televised. But at the same time, then we've gone into such a world where. That would then seem a gross lack of transparency, so it must remain there. But the question therefore is, if one is watching this, what's happening to your political knowledge and your sense of where things are going as a result of that exchange? In recent years, that's been, from an analytical perspective, that's been somewhat lacking, to put it mildly.
So if you want to improve your ethos, logos, or pathos, Is that all down to how you communicate, or is it the actual messaging as well? Is it a combination of the two?
It's that back to that notion of being at the heart of the work and therefore who that work serves. You know,
Yes.
the great speech serves the audience, not the speaker in that side. And so one of the ways we overcome anxiety and nerves and doubts in that sense is because fundamentally I'm not there for me. I'm there for that person. Now, I've been fortunate that I've spent so much of my professional angling, as it were, supporting other people that, as I say, I'm used to that position. But then, of course, one can get so used to that position. As I said earlier, you then start to lose who I am in the mixture of that. And what am I serving if I'm saying something rather than helping someone else to say or sing something? So the ethos is kind of undeniably fixed in the first instance. You can improve that which you do for others to the point where your ethos is now a broader palette on which to draw. But fundamentally, that notion of, once we all get past a certain age, why am I listening to you talk about this or that? Then it's your earned experience and your expertise is the character that you have at the heart there. Yeah. The old famous example used to be in old 50s Westerns or whatever, when the town is about to break down and riot. And then the 90-year-old comes out of the open saloon doors and goes, "Stop, listen to me. I was born here. My kids were raised here. My grandkids were raised here. I'm telling you, we've seen every riot going, but this is, this riot stops right now, and I'm going to tell you why. And the town listens to him because his ethos is, this man is this town through and through, and he's right. This needs to stop now. This is petty and temporary, in that sense. So that's kind of immovable. Logic is a usefully movable feast, the logos, because of course it's the quality of your reasoning. Mm-hmm. So if we're information poor on something, we can expand our information. If all the clues aren't in your material, then get better material. We're going to need a bigger boat, right? Yeah. So that's that's a happily movable feast, because time and focus and purpose can really improve that drastically. Pathos comes down to a degree of emotional intelligence and emotional understanding. That can, of course, some people that's wide open, and so a very natural thing for them to help move the dial of others through that emotional exchange. For others, it's a question of, if they feel that they've had to mask that or hide that as a result of, particularly in the corporate world, bleeding next to sharks in the corporate world isn't advisable. So there's a sense of having hidden that. Mm-hmm. And so then I tend to think about that more kind of tactically in terms of, okay, but nonetheless, we do need, reason alone moves nothing. So we still need to move the dial, move the situation, move the people on the other side of the table. Yeah. So which elements of you or the situation can we incorporate in order to do that? Yeah. So there's a lot of flexibility, but the ethos at the heart tends to have a more sort of rooted sense of it works or it doesn't in the given moment.
Yeah. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. It resonates completely with me. I think maybe this is true for all people. Maybe they're all heavily weighted towards one, maybe out of the three, in terms of the ethos, logos, and pathos. I felt like when I used to do public speaking when I first started, I was always about wanting to make sure I had the best information. I wanted to make sure I was giving people what I thought they needed, but I had no presentation skills. And so when I would go on stage and I'd be followed by a keynote speaker, the keynote speaker was all about presentation, and I felt they weren't giving as much value in terms of their content, but the delivery was so much better that they looked like just much, much better speakers. And so I realized at that point that I needed to try and improve my own communication skills. And then, of course, working with YouTube as well, I realized that the more performative I was with my voice, the better my videos performed. And then that voice started to translate into other areas of my life where actually people listen to me more carefully in business or in business meetings, because I developed my voice. And I'm not saying my voice is particularly special, but I just sounded more confident. And just having that extra air of confidence made people listen to me more carefully, if that makes any kind of sense.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So do you think people are balanced or unbalanced, or more, they're more one than the other three?
I think very much a question of nurture, nature, but profoundly nurture in terms of influence in that regard. I was very fortunate that I was immersed from a very young age in film, literature, music, poetry, not through any grand scheme of anything, just through the passion of my parents and family members. My father was an English teacher. My mother was a singer, and my uncle played piano, but would only play film themes. So when you put all that together, then I was sort of immersed in that. So encouraged to write poetry from the age of 3, and therefore passionate about the putting of that together. So that's a nurture situation that inevitably then leans you towards, it leans a bias towards that example. Yeah, certainly. Therefore, nurture-wise, depending on the professionalism, the professional path that we take, and otherwise, then every aspect will reinforce one or more of those directions.
Yeah,
and then, as we were saying at the start, necessity being the seed of innovation. Then fundamentally, depending on how you need to move ahead, if driven to move ahead, that will boost, either of those categories, depending on what it is that you're doing. So obviously certain industries will require far more pathos than others.
Yeah.
A counselor compared to a global executive search partner will have a very different requirement for pathos on a day-to-day basis, as an example. But,
got it. No, it makes perfect sense. So when it comes to, again, for most people are watching this will be creators, there'll be businesses. They're looking at making video, but also making their videos perform better. A big part of that is how they communicate on camera. I'm very, very guilty of never actually really doing a warm-up before I deliver to camera. What I'll do is I'll read my script out loud. I'll have a pre-prepared script. I'll do what I call a dry run, read it out loud, practice a few different ways of modulating what I'm saying to try and make it sound more interesting. And then maybe that's as much as I do. If I think I sound a little bit flat, then maybe what I'll do is I'll test my range a little bit. So then I'll try and go as deep as I possibly can, and then maybe go as high as I possibly can. Just kind of test that range, and then I kind of fall back into the middle, and then I seem a little bit more energetic in my delivery. But that's as much as I do. Should people be doing some kind of vocal warm up before they actually talk to camera?
It depends.
Okay, good. So, I thought you were going to look at me with a very critical eye there. You don't do warm-ups? Oh my God.
Oh my goodness. Right. Quick, get the
cane.
Get the cane and get the lemon and ginger tea and
yes.
everything else. Every remedy is different for every individual.
Okay.
Every approach of technique is different for every individual. It's glorious to have the opportunity, like I say, on that notion of doing the work. It's glorious to have the opportunity to immerse ourselves in as many of those influences as possible, as many of those tools as possible on our proverbial belt, until the point where the saturation becomes confusing. So depending on our sort of hunter-gatherer mindset, or just give me the specifics, then, I'm a hunter-gatherer. I'm like, give me 94 tools right now, and I'll collect them all, and collect all 94 and send away for the sticker book. And then I'll work my way through those and find lines that I can draw between them. Some people are like, I need 1 or 2 things right now to fix this. Otherwise, don't confuse me with 10 different people telling me how to breathe or how to sing a high note or a low note. So back to that notion of never one size fits all, and that all of the preparation is in the work. So you are able to sit down and do that because you're so experienced at sitting down and doing that under every possible condition. Whatever has happened outside, whatever, no parking space, family emergency, whatever it might be, you're used to, but this needs to happen now, in that sense. And putting in those reps, as it were, is a huge part of that. So inevitably, one develops one's own set of tools in order to utilize. The need for expanding upon that, therefore, becomes if the need for outcome changes.
Okay.
So in your situation, you're building constantly on the YouTube side. You understand all the metrics and retention elements inside out in that sense. You know how to hit those markers. And so you're able in that situation to go, okay, check. High, low, right. Great. Okay, there it is. Middle, excellent, right.
Middle,
I'm Luke Sharon, right?
That's such an impression.
Yes. Well, for the benefit of the listeners at home, I had listened to you long before you'd ever heard of me. So
that blows my mind.
Absolutely true. And yes, check all of that out.
And so you have seen the Thor video?
I have seen the Thor video. I've tried growing the hair towards
Me too.
Unfortunately, this is where it got stuck today. Had the interview been later, who knows? But might have got there. But inspirational nonetheless on every possible level in that regard. So yeah, in terms of, I'm back to that notion of working with the individual and meeting them, let's start where we stand.
Yeah.
Then it is your pitch control that most resonates with me. So it's interesting that your quick check vocally in terms of top and bottom plays into that. So as I say, I refuse to give top 10 tips, but I'm always happy to have a little play in play in an exercise or otherwise. So all right, so I'm going to ask you just to. It's a poem, right?
Oh,
I'm going to ask you just to repeat. We're just going to take it line by line.
Okay.
And I'm going to alter the pitch as I go through.
Okay.
All right. This is a poem that my father wrote. So, all right, Here we go. Line by line, and just copy me. The important thing is nothing's going to change about my physiology.
Okay.
When someone thinks about singing high or singing low, inevitably they attach the physiology to it and start matching the low, high, right? In that sense.
Yes.
This is the last place you want to be. Trying to sing high because there's no breath support. Everything's got pinched and closed, and it's a nightmare. Similarly here, right? I'm blocked off my where's the air? I can put it down there if I want to, right? In that way. But I can also put it down there if I want to, looking straight ahead, right?
You sound super Welsh.
So that's the other thing.
Yeah.
When I put it down there, inevitably, I'm auditioning for Tom Jones, right? Right. Now, all right. So. Perfect stillness. It's only on the breath.
Okay.
All pitch is only on the breath.
So I'm copying you.
So you're going to copy me. I'll read a line. You read a line.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So right in the middle, natural speaking voice to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
A bird of prey am I.
A bird of prey am I.
I fly where'er I please.
Say that again.
I fly where'er I please.
I fly where'er I please.
High and low matter not to me.
High and low matter not to me.
I fly with equal ease.
I fly with equal ease.
And we'll keep that poker face, right? If up above I spy.
If up above I spy.
A tempting morsel fly.
A tempting morsel fly.
Then higher and higher and higher I go.
Then higher and higher and higher I go.
Till the earth below can be seen no more.
Till the earth below can be seen no more.
Good. Keeping it still. But if perchance my prey swoops down.
But if by chance my prey swoops down.
And plummets downward to the very ground.
And plummets down to the very ground.
Then lower and lower and deeper I descend.
Then lower and lower and deeper I descend.
Until there is no hope for my fine feathered friend.
Until there is no hope for my fine feathered friend.
There you go. That's it. Man's got range. Man's got range. He asked not to sing, so there it was.
Yes, honestly.
But the stillness, right? You're using the breath. Shoulders stayed perfect, and the pitch is
it was actually quite hard to stay still because I had that, as you said, I had that tendency to wanting to lift my head for the high notes and trying to kind of come down for the...
Find it on the floor.
Pretty much. Yeah.
But it's all in the instrument and the air. Yeah. As Tom Waits had it, let's do cool things with the air. So it's all in that stillness.
That's incredible. So now my voice does feel super warmed up. I feel like I can do something really good now.
Well, playing in, as I say, bespoke to you, playing in that playground of clearly for you that sense of pitch movement is in there. So my encouragement, based on what you said, is therefore seek that, as Richard Burton would have it, strength in stillness, and you're only working on the air. Not working on any physical change whatsoever. Importantly, what that enables us to do on camera, whether it's in film or on YouTube, is anything that we do thereafter is a performative choice.
Yeah.
So we could be going, higher and higher I go to the earth below, can we see no more? But still, my technique is, it was calm and simple and just on the air.
Yeah.
I didn't need to do anything physically. And therefore, we can work with the camera, we can work on film, work with whatever the director wants while still having that range. Also goes for emotional and otherwise. So
amazing. It's funny because when I first started talking to camera, I actually could not stay still. And the more I tried to stop myself from moving, all these other, it's like whack-a-mole, all these other kind of weird quirks and personalities started kind of coming out. And I think what made me look super, super uncomfortable in front of camera is because people could tell that I wasn't in a natural environment. So I think the only way I've managed to get rid of that is just through practice.
Yeah.
So is there something people could do to practice just being relaxed in front of camera? Again, is it like a physical thing or is it just all mental?
If anything, that degree of breath control, so that you don't feel like something has to change physiologically in order to achieve a certain effect, is a core part. At the same time, in terms of what you're describing there, then that really is about putting in the reps because it's such a physical response. We can all have a very different response to that. It's the life is like a swan, serene up top and kicking away like hell underneath. So it's so that is a practice element in terms of, because you need to identify where in the body this is heading next, and you got to stop it in its tracks. So because that will always happen, in early days of things. That's why, like in classic job interview technique, it's hands together on the desk, so that at the very least you're holding something together.
But when I was first doing public speaking, someone said to me, if you're ever feeling a bit lost, just hold your hands like this and clench your buttocks like crazy.
See, there it is again. Put Vaseline on your teeth. My thing is always no new ingredients or exercises on show day, right?
Is that right? Okay,
so there was a corporate guy I was working with recently who I won't name, but wouldn't mind me telling this story. We hadn't met before. We had an amazing month where I just lived in a hotel next to near his place, and we worked every day up to this like launch speech for his career. And so an amazing month. I just love that immersion coaching in that sense. And so it's on the Friday morning, and I get a message saying, so I went to the barber's, had my hair cut and everything else, and the barber said, what I need to do is put Vaseline on my teeth. I'm like, what? He's like, you haven't, have you? It's like, yeah. And he's already slurring on the phone.
Oh no!
So we're going into the final rehearsal in the venue ahead of the speech, and it's like, oh god, no!
What a nightmare!
No new ingredients. This close to showtime.
Absolutely.
But in the reps, practice makes permanent, not perfect. So let's
practice makes permanent. So I've heard you say that a few times. Yeah. Practice makes permanent. That's a great quote. I love that quote.
Yeah. So permanently, if the danger of is it hold and clench is that right now you're always clenched, so now the breath isn't flowing in the same way. So if you need to achieve something different with the breath, other than hello, I'm Luke Sharon, and then now you've got a barrier to that, a physical barrier. You've also created a crutch now, right? Because now unless I'm doing that, I'm like, oh, something's wrong.
I feel uncomfortable.
And then that creeps in. It's like, well, I can't do that right now because I in this scene I'm holding a holding a pad and pointing at that guy, right? Just trying to keep clenching. What am I clenching next? I have a tight big toe.
That's really, really good advice. Yeah. So it's funny. I don't even know where that advice came from. I couldn't tell you where it came from, but I still remember it now. Thankfully, I don't clench my buttocks on stage anymore. So it's
the camera,
be pleased to know.
The camera never lies.
Exactly. Now, I'm actually a huge Game of Thrones fan. So when I heard that you'd been involved in House of the Dragon, I was just desperate to get some insights into what you've done. But you actually worked quite closely with Matt Smith, as I understand it. So as a vocal coach, or was it something else? What were you doing with Matt?
By and large, as a vocal coach, and then also a vocal guide on set. So what inevitably happens is that with a tight turnaround time, then it's a question of, this is a new scene or a new approach to the scene, and therefore we need 48 hours intense scenario. So I'll get the call that says, please go to X studio. There's the hotel. Wait for a video call, and Mr. Smith will be in touch on a video call. He's en route from the studio back home at the moment, and this is the time he has this evening. And so you find yourself talking in the back of a cab to Matt Smith over video call in a popular hotel chain. So the intensity on that particular one is that, of course, it has its own language in terms of Valyrian, and so I was sent all of the files from production that included the lyrics and a kind of estimation of a sound file.
So this was a song, wasn't it?
A song, yes. So in the scene, Matt is singing in order to conjure a dragon into being, or get the dragon to do something of his bidding. And no spoilers, you understand. And as a result, then yes, I had to essentially learn this language overnight in the hotel, because the next day we were on set and I was essentially prompting Matt with the lines. So he comes out with a torch, and then the lyrics definitely escape me now, but essentially something like and then repeat, and then we'd build out of that. But yeah, Matt was absolutely wonderful, as you can imagine. And we also had many detailed discussions on the whole public speaking side and speech writing side in the mixture of that, because he gave me an interesting, he gave me an interesting angle in terms of, which I'm familiar with some, but it always fascinates me when actors say it. you'd think as an actor, with my experience, public speaking would be the most natural thing in the world to me.
Yeah.
But, this wasn't Matt saying this, but someone else was, but I am the embodiment of the line, at a funeral, I'd rather be in the coffin than speaking at it.
Wow. Okay, yeah.
So that happens to actors too, to the point where, I've worked with a few where I've helped them separate that out. If you think award ceremonies and everything else, then that comes into play.
Is that because they're not reading from a script? And with public speaking, there's a degree of either writing their own script or speaking freely? Or why is that? What's the difference?
I draw it back to that notion of, are you playing a character or are you being yourself?
Yes.
And so it's, there are on and off versions of us all. If we're, in the arts, in entertainment and otherwise, then, as like you're saying about, The Rock and otherwise, I'm me, but I'm dialing it up. That dial up obviously will depend upon the context. Mm-hmm. Is this a context to dial that up, or is it a sad occasion, a different occasion, a very solemn, serious situation where that dial-up is inappropriate? And so the minute you change the context, suddenly now the question is, well, am I having to create a character for that context, or am I finding that within myself? And as actors, we find inevitably that we, like I was saying about having to find my voice again, mm-hmm. You play so many other people that your natural muscle is, okay, who am I creating in order to go do this?
Yeah.
And that sometimes is a contextual problem, depending on what it is that you're going to do.
Wow. Fascinating stuff. So as well as being a vocal coach, you are a script writer as well. Is that right? You screenwriting, you're doing all kinds of things. We just spoke about how actors don't like not having a script. What tips would you give for script writing for an individual or for a business? What is there some kind of takeaway that will improve what they're doing?
So the takeaway up front for script writing, screenwriting for a video in that mix would be the notion of, to what extent is it bringing value to the audience, not to you, in that broader sense. One of the challenges in terms of film industry screenwriting and otherwise is that can be very often, or quite often, the thing is written, made, and then presented to an audience, and then the audience, either like or dislike it. If they dislike it, then that audience wasn't who was in mind for the thing that was written. As content creators, we have the benefit of being able to at least begin to narrow down that notion of for whom it is that we're writing and bringing value in that sense. And so, that's the fundamental takeaway for me. As I touched upon earlier, I love that immersion process and love putting the work in order to sort of earn the stripes of whatever it might be. On a personal level, I also work very well when I have various mentors who encourage that notion and therefore keep my sense of momentum, in that sense. But we're all guilty of writing the thing that we're passionate about and then having to subsequently nuance it when someone, albeit a supportive mentor, reads it and goes, "What?"
Yes,
who?
That's not the feedback I was looking for.
Who's the main character? Where's this going? Et cetera, et cetera. So whilst it's two things true at once, all writers should only write what they know is the one soundbite, right? Which is inevitably ends up kind of biographical or some distorted version of biography, as in the case for me on my sort of most prominent screenplay push at the moment. But at the same time, there's an inherent danger in that becomes so colloquial and narrowly interested that you're not speaking to a broader audience. And so I feel on the content creation side, that speaks particularly to the manner in which YouTube and retention and all of those metrics give you clues back as to where it is that you should be taking the next element. But if you were to put that rhetorical identity in play of you've got your ethos in place, right? Mm-hmm. This is why I'm talking about this. You've got the logic of the reasoning, this is how I'm approaching it. And, you're building storytelling through conflict and resolution. Therefore, you're hitting that pathos emotional button. Then if you're doing that as a content creator, and then you're able to, through the logos, follow the metrics in order to keep refining that, then inevitably that would be the ultimate transferable skill from imagining an end product as a director and a screenwriter to imagining the end series of videos and audience retention and reaction as a content creator.
Love it. Perfect answer. Really, really good. Now, I said at the start of this podcast that you are mainly behind the scenes, and I think that's largely true, but you are in front of the camera actually as well. In fact, not only previously in your past, but you've actually got an upcoming project as well where you play Richard Burton, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Are
down goes the head.
Oh, yes. Are you allowed to talk about this? Yeah.
Yes. So this goes back to Dexter Fletcher, and sort of via Kenneth Branagh.
Mm-hmm.
So with Mr. Branagh, I worked on Death on the Nile and Belfast, and so Dexter Fletcher's support and indeed, piss taking of my Welsh accent would lead to the two of us doing very over the top Dylan Thomas impressions, and indeed Richard Burton impressions. Dylan Thomas was actually quite anglicised in his kind of go like this more, bellowing with the vibrato of a minister. Whereas Burton, of course, kept it very down there.
Yes.
Else. What we don't understand so much with Burton is that we're hearing him through recorded sound.
Yes.
So there's a grit and a tape noise to the voice that adds substantively to that.
Oh, really?
And when you hear him in different scenarios, it's actually a little bit softer.
Oh, wow.
So I was obsessed with this as the Welsh arts person that I am, and so out of the Dexter thing, I ended up recording a spoken word record of Dylan Thomas poetry, which I dedicated to Dexter, called "The Air That Drew Away," which is a line from one of his poems and is available everywhere, wherever you get your noises streamed. This then led to me being asked by the Dylan Thomas family to do a reading of In My Craft or Sullen Art at Westminster Abbey for the annual Dylan Thomas celebration there, at which a member of Richard Burton's family was present and decided to take me under his wing and cast me as Burton in a play about his life.
Wow.
Then COVID hit, and so the play was cancelled. But I was now, in terms of not finding myself, right, I was now eternally haunted by this Burton inside me. Which, depending how much you know about Richard Burton, can be a dangerous thing. And so it's kind of lived with me over these years, looking for different projects and otherwise. And then over, where are we? Last year, then, so 2024, I found myself playing him in a short film that is due to come out in November, which will coincide with the centenary of his birth. So that's the
and where can we see that?
There. But so it'll be digital in the first instance, and I'm sort of waiting to see in what way it goes more broadly. But for me, it was really a sense of having put in so much work ready for the play, and then having to kind of put it on ice through that time, and then working with Kenneth Branagh and feeling that Shakespearean pull that's such an intrinsic part of Richard Burton, then the passion just never went away for it, and I kept working on the voice and altering everything physically that I could, because, like I say about that danger of pointing down. Yeah. Well, if anything, when Burton's down there, even though there's a softer element when he's bringing things into being, it's in my craft, or he's also quite pacey, right? So in my craft or sullen art, exercised in the still night when only the moon rages and the lovers lie abed with all their griefs in their arms, right? He's playing with the pace, but the danger if you do an impression of the tape sound of Burton is you start dirtying it up, right? I was but a boy, and you start overdoing that completely, and instantly you're only doing it from the throat now. Yeah. You're not doing it from the breath. Yeah. Whereas Burton's body was the instrument, and therefore it has to be in the whole body. That's why you got to be careful with impersonations and accents, where you end up just putting it in the throat to mimic it. Yeah. And then if you're actually playing that character, that becomes, you're working on that every day for a year or something. You're going to strain. Now you got some problems.
Absolutely.
So in spite of all of my knowledge and otherwise, I caught myself after 3 weeks of rehearsing for the play doing that, putting dirt in there that I wasn't supporting, So because you start obsessing with the character rather than your physicality. So,
absolutely. It's funny, we were speaking before, because one of my favorite voices, just to listen to generally, is actually the voice of Antonio Banderas. Yes, Puss in Boots. Puss in Boots. Yes, I just love doing impressions of it. It's fantastic. But I just love not only the texture of his voice, but the rhythm, everything I think is fantastic. And as it turns out, he was actually a big source of inspiration for you.
Yes, indeed.
The movie that you mentioned to me specifically was Desperado.
Yes.
And of course, Zorro.
Yes.
Where he was, in fact, working with another Welsh countryman, Anthony Hopkins.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
So, yes, there's that argument that at a certain stage in your life, there's that one piece of cultural ephemera that changes and fixes you in so many ways. Desperado at the age of, I probably saw it around 14 or 15 was that movie for me. I've just been an old chunk of coal wandering from town to town like a criminal drifter ever since. But yeah, the sort of shoestring budget work of Robert Rodriguez, very inspirational as a filmmaker on so many things. His book Rebel Without a Crew is a phenomenal account of how to make things happen on your own terms. And I believe he's just released an audiobook of it after decades. So yeah, well worth checking out. So he'd made El Mariachi for $7,000, and then Desperado was like a sort of sequel / remake. But so the soundtrack. That's the thing, like as with Tarantino, the putting songs in movies, right? The quality of the syncing of the songs into that movie. Yeah. As I understand it, he shot the movie to the songs and then realized that like the rhythm of the scenes and everything else was shot to these temp tracks, as it were. And then he realized, like, hell, that's working. I've now got to buy. I'm gonna have to buy all the rights because there's just take it away and my rhythm's gone. Yeah. So on a musical level, on a visual level, filmmaking level, and then just the dramatic intensity of Banderas. Then growing up in the rough valleys of Wales, then I had some parallels there. Yeah. And then, but being the bleeding soul artist that I was at the same time, then of course Banderas jumps to playing Che Guevara in Evita opposite Madonna. And so in my early musical theatre days, I was largely playing Che Guevara but with Antonio Banderas' accent, opposite a wonderful Eva Peron called Beth and Loxdale, and that turned into a touring production and endless sort of hosting variety shows and everything else. But my party piece became why try to govern a country when you can become a saint? Love it. Yes, yeah. So yeah, of all the you always have the list working in film of actors you'd love to work with, but yeah, he's someone who if he walked in the room, he would just be okay. There's so much to say. Yes, yeah. In terms of those wonderful creative turning points where you just see something or hear something, and suddenly your life feels different. And I was all set to do a law degree, and really? And then it was I can't let music go, and now I'm on stage all the time, and and the jazz thing was coming through as well. A wonderful man called Brian Jobson, who lived in Tembe, where we'd holiday every year. And so he started me off on blues and boogie piano. And then as the years went by, so this was like from when I was 6 or 7, and then as the years went by, he'd give me a year's worth of sheet music every year and say, go away for the year and then come back next year. And I've memorized it all, so you can sing it, play it in any key, and then come back next year and show me what you've done. Wow. And so that went so phenomenally well, to the point where I couldn't wait to go back on holiday, not because of a holiday, but because I couldn't wait to get back at that piano. So he then started putting me in his gigs as a guest, and then indeed depping gigs out to me when he had too many gigs that week. Wow. So I'd go down to Tempe and live in a hotel and gig very, very happily.
I bet. Wow, that's amazing.
Full of jazz noise.
And coming back to music, because we've talked about so many different things that you do, from the production side, the music side, to the exec coaching, everything. But there's more, isn't there? Because you actually produce records as well.
Yes, yeah.
In fact, just to drop a name, Suki Waterhouse is someone that you're working with at the moment.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I've had the great pleasure of working with her since she auditioned for Daisy Jones and the Six, the Amazon series, which actually was a nod from Taron. So it was one of those great moments where whenever you finish a film, it feels like you've been made redundant. You'll never work again, and it's heartbreak hotel. I've been there, man. Yep. So and it's usually totally unexpected because they changed the shooting order, and so now that's it. After
last day.
After 6 months, that was it yesterday. All the best for the rest of your life, right?
Yeah.
So the glorious time on the set of Death on the Nile. And then that happened. It was just a random Wednesday, and it's like, so you don't need to come in tomorrow. We've got everything. So well done, thank you. So you're completely full on. Wow. Nearest
it's like a breakup.
Yeah, nearest pub, and it's like, gone again. Never work again. The phone will never ring again. So close. Yes. Could have been a contender, right? So so it was in in that inevitable crash mode, and then the next day, come back from the gym, laptops on, and I see recommendation from Taron, and I was like, no way. So that was the glorious Suki Waterhouse, who has been a phenomenal force in my life, saving it at many turns. She landed the role in Daisy Jones and the Six. Yeah. And then COVID hit and they wanted to carry on the preparation. So I was essentially coaching her over Zoom in the first instance. She actually led me, therefore, inadvertently to build a remote coaching video studio. Wow. So multiple monitors, multiple cameras, multiple instruments, so that I could music direct on set, but from my flat.
Amazing.
As was. And so bit by bit, I stood staring at the office for 2 weeks. She was like, in 2 weeks' time, can we work every day for the next 3 months on this show? And so I just stood looking at my office for 2 straight weeks thinking, how am I going to get, because I had just a regular upright piano, not a digital piano. So it's like, thinking of miking that up and everything, then you had the delay on Zoom, so you can't play in real time, can't accompany someone in real time. So I ended up learning the delay inherently so that I could anticipate the delay and accompany them in real time and just forget what I was hearing back from them.
Oh my God.
So as long as if we were to say the same phrase at the same time right now, exactly the same time, then you say it slightly after me, but I'm not bothered by the fact you're saying slightly after me, and I keep saying it at the pace that I'm saying it. That was my sort of goal.
Melting my brain, even just trying to think about it.
It took me a while to undo that too.
Yes, I bet.
You, the first time you sat
every
with
day for 3 months.
Exactly. Yeah. The first time you sat with a band again, you're like, hearing this horrible pull. And then she started bringing me in on other projects that she had going, including show pilots and that kind of stuff, and working on the sort of speechwriting side with her as well. She's been phenomenally generous in terms of mentioning me in press coverage, New York Times, all this kind of stuff. And I'm delighted to say she has a whole bunch of exciting things coming up as we sit here now in June. And therefore, I'll be back with her from July, which I'm absolutely delighted about because it's been a while.
Incredible. What a connection, and what a nice recommendation as well.
Yes, indeed. Yes. Yeah.
You must, because my understanding is, every person that you've worked with, Dexter Fletcher, Kenneth Branagh, Taron, all these people, you've done a phenomenal job for all of them. So you must get recommendations all the time, surely.
Yes, yeah. I'm very fortunate to be represented by Dell Associates, and so they're always on the hot on the press, a very new thing that comes along. But yeah, certainly the substantive part of what is in excess of 25 movies and series at this point, over 7 years, has been a follow-on project from something else that I work with. So, for example, Katrina Balfe on Belfast becomes Katrina Balfe on Outlander.
Yes.
Samara Weaving on Chevalier becomes her own projects and helping her audition for other musical things. And so, it builds in that sense. When I on Rocketman, Jamie Bell and I became very, very close during the shoot, and so he was full of great lines. But when I started doing the press, the behind the scenes stuff that you referenced earlier, he was always there. Behind the scenes, taking the piss out of me, and and so he would say in the thickest Welsh accent, "Oh, we were like brothers." So I made him an honorary Welshman, and brought him a Welsh rugby shirt. So when he recorded "Goodbye Yellow Brick Road" at Abbey Road Studios, then we all had Welsh rugby shirts on. So
amazing. And Jamie Bell, of course, was the original Billy Elliot for the movie.
Yes, indeed. Yes, yeah. And now what a talent.
Yeah,
he was the second cast member for me on Rocketman, and
really?
I was living in the hotel in Windsor, and you arrive like 4 or 5 a.m. on at the studios every day, and so one day suddenly there's a new trailer next to Taron's trailer, and there's Jamie Bell reading a script on the steps, and it was just I understand we'll be working together, but his Welsh accent is phenomenal. I actually got him doing the my father's poem.
Oh, did you?
As well, to the point where he
now memorized it. I suppose.
He had it memorized, and when we wrapped on it, he sent me a message saying that the poem will forever stay with me. Thanks to your father.
Excellent. I must get a copy of that myself.
Absolutely.
I might use it as my new warm-up routine before I start my videos.
I'd be honoured. Thank you.
So was there anywhere people can find you, whether it's for exec training, whether it's for something else, where's the best place for people to find you?
Absolutely. So as things stand in June 2025, then I'm Michael L. Roberts on LinkedIn, which will remain that way. My film and music website is michaellroberts360.com, as Giles Martin once joked, because you're an all-around kind of guy. And nice. Yes, and we're in the process at the moment of rebranding a new combination site of executive and creative performance coaching, which is set to be go live in October 2025. So hopefully we can shove a link to that underneath the video when that's up and running. But yeah, and then Twitter, I'm ML Roberts 360.
So you're definitely most well known for your film and creative work. So when it comes to working with your executive clients, how does that impact the way that they perceive you?
Indeed, good question. There's inevitably that common misconception of anything that's in the arts, to the point where it's been sort of undervalued or underappreciated insofar as the degree of structure that's required. It's the music business, it's the film business. There's a severely executive and corporate angle to all of these things, an obsession with return on investment, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm going in somewhat more, let's say it's been a sort of quasi cold recommendation rather than a warm recommendation. So I'm fighting for my life and worth in the first instance with a corporate client. Then it's often that sense of, well, what, so you work in films and your music, I get it. That transferable skills, yes, I get it. But what do you understand about the corporate culture or the intensity of turnaround time, return of investment, et cetera, et cetera? How will I know that you're measuring? You're measuring your work with me to the point where I can know that value was delivered at the end of the end of the scenario. And so inevitably in that situation, I find myself giving a breakdown of all the aspects of music, all the aspects of film, all the aspects of these elements that speak directly to that. But one of the interesting ones that always comes up with people in very intense, high pressure, high stakes scenarios, particularly in finance and law, where literal companies and turnovers and lives are on the line, is. So I get it. You play piano and sing. What do you possibly know about that degree of pressure? Mm-hmm. And inevitably, it leads to various stories from film of where I've been in high pressure situations where there are tens or hundreds of thousands on the line, and and a lot of people's creative lives and reputations at stake, and it's all on your shoulders in that moment. We were mentioning a project that I've just finished working on that we spoke about over dinner last night, that whilst I can't say the details of, it's been one of the more, at this stage, it's been one of the most intensive examples of that high pressure scenario, where you're dealing with such a degree of A-list talent, both in the lead actor and the director, and such a sense of closed set and very limited exposure to where the script is going. It's a page a day and you don't know where it sits in the overarching project, the overarching story, that even though I'm there in a direct capacity to coach and support the lead actors and surrounding cast members in the situation, I'm kept from the front line until the last moment as well. Yeah. So it's just been a funny example to sort of bring into the end here, where, most people know the notion that, being on a film set from actors' biographies and things is just being sat around for a long time, waiting to be called to deliver half a line and then, go to lunch. But in my situation, it really is, always the key scene will be put right at the end of the day. Yeah. So you arrive at, 4, 5, 6 a.m. and the key scene is going to be 5:45 p.m.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you've got like 11 hours to keep yourself in the place where you're not going to second guess anything. Mm-hmm. You know exactly what it is that you prepared for. You know exactly what it is that you did with the actor in pre-production. And when you go out onto that set, the importance of you delivering that and only that, so that they lock back into the communication that they had with you, under calmer circumstances, and can therefore deliver, because there are only 15 minutes left before everyone gets paid beryllium overtime, right? Yeah. Is absolutely paramount. And in the early days, Rocketman, Death on the Nile, that ability to narrow that down would get so distorted because it could be 14 hours, 15 hours, 16 hours, then it does go into overtime. So 18 hours, 19 hours, you're stood with that one thought in mind of that great thing we did in pre-production. Everything that's happening to the actor, everything that's happening to the director is all changing your mindset on that. And you've got to keep blocking it out and keep it calm. And so that when you do finally get to go out there, having stood, been on your feet for 18 hours, you finally get to go out there and say, do this and only this. And then great, we got it. Wow, that's a wrap. This one I've been on in start of 2025 here has a huge sort of theatre curtain between me and that situation. It's quite an elaborate set on the other side of the curtain. Yeah. So it's been quite sort of a comedically dramatic version of that, where I can't see anything. There are no monitors. There are no anything. I just stand staring at a curtain for 12, 13 hours, keeping that one thought in mind. The curtain goes up. I'm on A-list set with emergency notes, emergency action. Boom, that's it. That's a wrap. Go home. And then, collapse in the car. So
not only is that pressure, that just sounds physically and mentally exhausting as well,
Taking a while to put in the reps to get used to that.
Yes, I bet. Well, yeah, that certainly sounds transferable to the business world as well.
Indeed,
I think if anything, that probably sounds like more pressure than some of the things they have to deal with.
There's ample understanding of high stakes. Let's put it that way. So
yes. Michael, listen, it's been so good having you here.
Absolute
I really could talk to you all day.
Likewise.
You're fascinating to talk to, and I really, really appreciate your time. If you're going to give one takeaway to people listening now that are creating videos, either for themselves as an individual creator or as a business, what would that piece of advice be?
We touched upon an element of it earlier, which is that to simply be yourself is an enormous undertaking.
Yes.
That takes a lifetime, can never truly be achieved in terms of the same way that dedication is, eternal. It's not a sense of, I then arrive. I get a piece of paper, I walk away, I am now something else. It's like, no, that is now a part of whatever it is that you're going to take forward. And so within the context of that, rather than giving a sort of one top tip, it would be that notion that is ever evolving. Your performative aspect on top of that, as we've touched upon in this sense, is you becoming an artist as well as that individual person. Yeah. So now you got two jobs to do in terms of, finding what it is about yourself that is of value to the audience in this regard, and then finding the way to perform that so that it reaches those people.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, I would close on the notion that all of the clues as to how to achieve both are in the material. And if they're not in the material, then work on the material until it's better material, because it is only within there that you will find all of those aspects. If the material is born of you and then communicated by you, then that is its best chance of being of transformative value to your audience.
Incredible. Wise words. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, my friend.
Looking forward to seeing you in your next projects.